Hello and welcome back to the Photoshop Challenge Week 2. Today we are going to focus on brushes and typography. And first I want to show you how to download and load into Photoshop the brushes, the two brushes that I left in the Week 2 asset folder for you. And then we'll, towards the end, work on typography. So in order to make sure everybody knows where the files are, I'm going to walk you through where I've put those. So on our Teams platform, if we click on Weekly Challenges and the Files tab at the top, we've got all these weeks and we'll hit Week 2. So the PSD file, Week 1 Start, is currently this file right here, where we left off last time. And the Brushes folder contains two brushes. So what I want to do is just select both of them and download them. And wherever you have your downloads for your computer, that's where that will end up. Alright, so here are my two brushes that are downloaded on my computer. 20 Dispersion Brushes is the one I'm going to load first. You can load them at the same time, but I'll just do one at a time. So Photoshop recognizes ABR files. They know that that is a brush file. So you can either drag the brush file into Photoshop. It looks like nothing happened, but I want to show you in your brush palette, at the very bottom, we now see this 20 dispersion brushes. So I'm going to delete that so I can show you. This is what it looks like without it. And if you're having a hard time finding your brushes on the right side, we're just going to go up to Window, click on Brush Settings, and it will place it in that far right toolbar. So again, in the Brushes palette, at the very bottom is where you will see the newly loaded brushes. And since I deleted it, it's not there. So now I'm going to go back over to where I have my brushes. And you can also just double click. I'm going to scroll down, and now we see that it's back in there. So our brush settings shows that brush is a bunch of particles. It's very hard to see, and I have a lot of brushes downloaded in here. But these are all the different types of brushes that that one file contains. They all say 2500 next to them, and that's just the pixel size, which is huge. And we will change the sizes so that we can actually see what the brush is without it being ginormous. But before I do that, I want to go back and load the other brush. So I'm going to go back to where I've downloaded my brushes on my computer. I'm going to click on the other one, I'm just going to double click it, and now we see Free Water Brushes Photoshop at the bottom. So in your brush settings, you've got the new dispersion brushes as well as the water brushes, and these are splashes of water. So just imagine a rock being thrown in water, and that is what it is. So I want to show you what these look like. In order to do this, a brush tool is either an eraser or a paint brush. And so we've done the eraser with the clipping mask before. So if we click on our eraser, I'm going to leave the brush. I'm going to find one of the particle brushes. And again, it's really big. When I put my mouse over here, you don't see it. You just see the plus. It's because it's so big. But I'm going to change the size. And now we see what this brush is going to look like, the outline of it. And since we're on the donut and we're on the mask, this brush, and we've got the eraser tool selected, this brush is actually going to take away. It's going to erase the donut with the shape of the brush. So we can see if we start erasing, it erases whatever the brush looks like. Let me do that again. So I'm just going to choose randomly any one of these dispersion brushes. I'm going to make the size of it. This will tell you kind of before you click on it. If you'll drag it up, you'll see the size. It's getting smaller. Since it's a small donut, we're going to make it fairly small. I'm going to make sure I'm on my mask on the cherry donut layer, and I've got over here the eraser tool selected. Once I have all that, I'm going to click on the donut and just keep clicking and dragging, and you can see it erasing, but it's erasing in this particle type. I guess it's disappearing in particles. And so that just gives you an idea of what these brushes look like. We don't want to erase the donut. I was just showing you what that is. And then also, so another way to view a brush is we're going to actually create a new layer. So at the bottom of your layers palette, you're going to click on the box with the plus in it. It's just going to create a new layer. And in this layer, I'm not going to name it right now while I show you what these brushes do. But now, instead of erasing something, we're going to actually add. And by adding, we're going to add with the paintbrush tool, or the brush tool. So once I click on the brush tool, and I'm on my new layer I've created, in my brush palette, I'm going to choose one of the brushes. I'm going to shrink it down just a touch. And you can notice right here the color. The color of what I'm about to paint now is going to be yellow. So if I click, that's what my brush looks like. It's no longer just a round circle, but it's now made up of all these blown up particles, and it's yellow. And the other brush that we installed, the water splash brush, so on the same layer with the paintbrush selected, all I did was change my brush, but see how we don't see the outline of it? It's because it's really, really big. Just shrink it down, and I'm actually going to change the color so we can see this a little better. Now, because I just changed the color on that layer, it didn't change other than moving forward. And so this is what the water splash brush looks like. And there's, again, options there to choose from. Different kind of, it just helps make really creative art without having to do everything. Either if you're not great at drawing or finding water, then now we have brushes to enhance and help us. So with all this brush mess I just made, this is all on one layer. And so this layer consists of different brushes and different colors depending on what I have chosen and inside this layer. And I'm going to start over and just remove this layer and work with one brush at a time. And we are going to focus on T-Rex layer. And what I want to do here is basically pull T-Rex a little more out from behind the cap rock, as if he's kind of knocked the top of the cap rock off. So we want to make it look like he's destroying it a little bit. So in order to do that, we can do it by subtraction and adding a layer with the paintbrush. And I want to make sure that we don't mess up our background layer, because whenever we have the background layer and like for instance, we can't erase it unless we've got a clipping mask on it, since it's got this vector or smart object icon on it. So having a mask, and here we don't want to erase our image. We always want that background to stay the same. So I don't need the layer mask on that. We're working with T-Rex. So with T-Rex's mask that we put on last time, we're actually going to add parts of him back. And so we're going to flip our swatches over here with black on top. We still have the erase tool, but since the black is on top, we're actually adding back in T-Rex. And you can see if I just erase, he actually reappears, because we're not erasing T-Rex, we're erasing the mask that's on top of him. So I'm going to get my brush tool a little larger, make it a little larger, and then still on the mask, but with the flipped over black on top, I'm just going to simply click a little bit on just the parts. Remember, all of this caprock is masking part of his body, so he's behind that. So it doesn't look like I'm doing a whole lot, but I am erasing a little bit of that mask so he can show through more. And now, on top of the T-Rex mask, we're going to add a new mask, just like I showed you. We're going to name this Brown Rocks. What I'm going to do here is, instead of erasing, I'm going to paint. So the paintbrush tool, or the brush tool, I'm sorry, on the left side, we're going to go ahead and click that. And wherever we left off last time with painting, it keeps that brush. So we've still got the water brush. So we're going to go back, we're going to find one of the dispersion brushes. We're going to take the size down a little bit. And what I like to do is find the color by double clicking on the swatch. It automatically populates this eyedropper tool over here. So let me show you. When I cancel this, all I'm going to do is put my mouse on the swatch and double click. Automatically this tool opens and I've got my eyedropper. So anywhere I click on my photo, it pulls that color out of it. And I want this brown rock explosion to basically be the same color as the rock. And it's made up of a million colors, but we're going to just choose a dark brown from it. So now, with the new brown rock layer selected, I've got my color, I'm on my paintbrush tool, I'm just going to click on top of the rock. And you can start to see that it's creating all these particles everywhere. In my theory, my hope is to make the caprock look like it's being exploding with T-Rex coming, trampling through. So there's also a way to make the sky come through as if there is holes by actually adding blue. So we've got a brown rock layer, and I'm going to add a new layer, and I'm going to label this one Blue Rocks. So I'm going to do the same concept, but I need to change my color. So I come over here and I double click the swatches. My eyedropper, I want it to be the same color as the sky, so I'm just going to find a blue in there and click OK. So now I'm going to paint blue rocks with my particle brush on top of all of the brown rocks. So now we get the sky coming through without the sky. It's actually just the color blue. And with these two layers, if I go in and say, well, I don't really want the blue particles on top of T-Rex's mouth like that, I need to erase that. Well, if I just go over here to my erase tool, it's still the particle brush, so we'll change it to just a regular default brush that has rather smooth edges. And I start erasing this, and I realize, oh wow, I didn't want to erase that much. Because we didn't add a clipping or a mask to this layer, I no longer can add and subtract with the black and white. See how it's not even black and white anymore? It's because there's not a mask on that layer. So all I have is the history palette to go back, or Command Z or Control Z, where you just undo, edit, undo. And we don't want to have to do that every time, because if our computer crashes or if we save our file, we no longer have those options, and now we've just lost part of our particle, which therefore we would have to redo. So the best way to edit any kind of layer is to just simply add a mask to it. So we go down here and find the mask, the rectangle with the circle, add that to our blue rock. Now we see the black and white swatches, which we want to have white on top so we can actually remove part of that layer. Again, you can make your sizing, and this works the same with any type of brush. It's just easier to see with the red on this one, that if you hold down Control Option, and it may be Alt Option or Control Alt, and you slide your mouse right to left, changes the diameter, up and down, changes the hardness of the eraser. So it could erase very sharp edges, or it could erase very soft. So we've taken out the blue sky from his mouth, so now it looks a little better, like the sky is more just in the cap rock. And we can even add even more explosions, and just know that if you add anything to these layers, it's going to be all in one layer. And so you can no longer pull and drag and move those around separate. So just create a new layer again. We'll call this Brown Rocks 2. And so I'm going to find my paintbrush tool, click on that. I've still got my dispersion, but we have options, so we might as well see what the other ones can do. They're very similar. I'm going to change the size. I don't really want it blue anymore. I think I'll use more of this red clay color. And I'm just going to start painting that. Now we've got all kinds of clay and rocks blowing up out of this. And one thing is, if you choose this color and you go back later and you say, you know, I really just wanted a lime green particle. For some reason there was a bush growing in it. Then it's really difficult to change the color without redoing it unless you use this FX blending options, which has a color overlay filter on it. If you click that, pull this out of the way, now we see your default will be normal as a blend mode, and then we're going to change the color. We can go in and see what kind of color looks the best. And I said I wanted crazy green like a bush. So then we have changed the color just on this layer. And I'm going to do that again. So we're going to go to FX at the bottom, which is a layer style. And if we click on that, there's a color lay option. And then we can come in here and change the color of whatever rock we want, or whatever explosion color we would like. And if you don't want that, you can turn it on or off. Just that's one way to change the color. Other ways in Photoshop where you change type and text, you don't have to go through the filter layer, but on this specific type, when you create a new layer like this, that's where you would have to go and create the color overlay. Okay, so we've got 3 layers here that are all of particles, and just to keep things clean, because you can see that our layers are growing and growing, we can go ahead and group these layers. Now when I do that, I'm going to make sure that I've got all of these selected. You can hold down Shift and select all of them. You can right click, go to Group from Layers. It's going to bring up this prompt, and don't worry about anything other than naming it. We'll just name it Particles. So inside of now this layer palette that's grouped is all of the particle layers. So if I move this as one unit, I gotta be on my move tool, and I'm on particles. I can move it. Now all of my particles can be moved together. You can move this up to be on top of everything, or you can move it wherever you need it to be. You can actually shrink all of it down together, blow it up. I wouldn't blow it up any larger than what it was, so that it doesn't start getting pixelated. Also with the group particles and this FX blending mode, you can change the color of all particles at one time. So what I mean is we've got blue, red clay, and dark brown. All those particle colors are individual as they are right now, but if you're in a group and you click on the group layer and FX color overlay, it changes all of them. Instead of just that one, now all of them are all different color, or all one color. But we don't want that in this case, so we're just not going to put the color on there. But we are going to group them just to keep it nice and clean. So that's one brush. Now we're going to focus on our other brush, and I would like to make a new layer and call this Drool. So T-Rex, to finish or continue our story, he is really wanting to get this donut, and he's drooling over it. So we're going to actually use our water brush by painting. So we click our paintbrush tool, we are on our drool palette. Now we're going to scroll down and find a water brush. Again, the size, got to get it a little smaller. I'm just going to stick that in his mouth, and well, maybe not the right color. So I can go to the FX, I can go to color overlay, and I could find a color this way. I'm not sure exactly what the best color of drool would be, but it's got to be some kind of whitish blue, right? And maybe that's just too weird or not what we wanted. So we can delete and start over. I'm going to name this again. A lot of Photoshop is trying and trying again. You can look at your brushes like we did the particle brush and maybe come up and figure out a better drool brush for this. Alright, now I'm just going to stick it right there in his mouth. And again, I'm going to undo because I'm going to show you another way to change the color. Before we actually even paint, we know we're not going to paint a brown drool. So we're going to come over here and try to find that blue-ish drool again. Well, that'll work for this one. Now there's part of it that I don't want to show, and so again I'm going to create a mask, and on this mask I need the eraser tool, and it defaulted back to what we had last time, which is the smooth edge, and we're on white on our swatches, so I'm just going to come in and just kind of clean up his drool a little bit, but I'm going to leave the rest of it. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can kind of see. So he's slightly drooling because he's really hungry for this donut, and he will do anything like bust open the cap of the Caprock in our photo. I know it's weird. I'm not a violent, angry person or this weird, but for some reason this composition is getting a little weird. So what we want to do now is, now that we've got our brushes loaded and we've played around with our brushes a little bit, we've made an explosion and we've made drool, now we want to switch over to the type tool. And with the type tool, we're going to think about this as a crazy movie coming on TV. So we're going to create a movie poster or a TV ad. So with the type tool, we're going to give this a header. In Photoshop, whenever you click on the type tool and you just click once, it puts up what this is, lorem ipsum. It's just placeholder text. So here we have where we can type in our title. If you'll just click again, you'll see your cursor. You can start typing. I'm going to name this the Palo Neuro, and then I'm going to call it the Showdown, but I just need this for right now. So now we have our text that's blue. So here was what I was talking about earlier. We don't have to change the color of text with this FX color overlay. You can, but in our text palette, which is called Character, again, if you don't see this, we're going to go up to Window, find Character, and it'll open it up for you. And this is where we have fonts that we can change. Got a ton of them, but for this sake, I will just make it simple. And then we can change the color inside of here. So whatever color you would want to use for your display, your header, we will just stick with black. I'm going to use Gotham. So we've got our header 1, which means the biggest text on the page. Everything from here gets smaller, nothing larger than header 1. But there's still another part that I would like to be the header. I just want it to be stylized a little differently. So I'm going to actually make a new layer. Oh, sorry, said that wrong. All I have to do is go over here to the text, and I'm just going to click, and it creates a new layer already. I don't have to do that. And this one, I'm going to write the word Showdown. And then you will notice, so once you're done writing your text, just click on the Move tool up here, and then you can move it around. But as you notice, with text, it names your layers, whatever is in your text. However, if you didn't want this to say Showdown, you just wanted to label it maybe Tagline, it doesn't change what you said over here. It just helps you know this is for more of your organization as far as you naming on this side. So we've got Showdown. And in our character tab, I want to still use Gotham, but Gotham has a wide range of light and heavy fonts, as far, or not fonts, but like the weight of the one font. So I want it to be a little bit skinnier, and then I also am going to make it a little bit smaller, but then there's two different sections in here that this top part is called leading and the bottom is called kerning. This says tracking and leading, so tracking and kerning. I'm going to focus on the kerning first, and the kerning is the space in between each letter. You can make it really, really close, or you can make it really far apart. Whenever you make things far apart, it's best to do if it's maybe one word, because it gets really hard to read if it's multiple words. I definitely wouldn't do it very far in a sentence. It makes it very airy. So I'm going to extend this just a little more. And then when I was talking about leading, I'll get to that in a second. That is more in paragraph style versus just right here we just have one word. You'll also notice this row of different T's. It's saying your text can be bold, it can be italicized. Right now it's on all caps. If I take that off, it goes back to upper, lower. And then this is a subscript, superscript, subscript 1, underline, and cross through. You can play with these and work a lot, making things, sizing them this way. To take it off, you'll notice they're highlighted or they're not highlighted. So when they're not highlighted, nothing's on. I would not worry about the bottom section. I don't even know what these are for. So just worry about the T row right here. And then you've got your fonts you can choose from. And in those fonts, it depends on what the font has inside of whatever it's created. Sometimes, like Gotham here, has a variety of styles, where some fonts just have one. So we're going to stick with light for Showdown. and I would like to stay with the full caps. So now that we have at least 2 headers, or one header with 2 different type styles on it, I want to make sure I can get it aligned. So one of the questions was, how can I get the grid lines to appear? So right now you'll notice the ruler edges I have on my screen. They're in pixels, that's why they're the high numbers. But to get rulers, you just do Command R. So this is taking them off. Command R again puts them back. Or that would be Control R on a PC. Another way you can find rulers is under the View tab. And then you'll find rulers. Right now it's checked because they're on. If I clicked it, now with it checked, it turned it off. So I'll go back, find it, turn it back on. So while you have your rulers, you're going to simply put your mouse and click anywhere on that ruler. While you click, you're going to hold and drag and pull what is a guide. So anywhere you come on that ruler, it's going to be horizontal no matter what. Like, you're not getting a vertical from this ruler. You get a vertical when you pull on the side ruler. So, and to clear the rulers, let's say, obviously that's a lot, so we don't need all of them. Whenever you hover over that line, it gives you your mouse changes. That's just a move tool. If you just drag it off your artboard, it goes away. Well, you can see it there, but if you drag it back into the ruler area, it disappears. So we're going to pull the ruler wherever we want and let go of your mouse. Drag and drop. Coming from the side, drag and drop, drag and drop. This is just to help you view where you want to place text. Sometimes when we have ads that will be printed, printers are just always going to print differently no matter where you're at, and things that are, for instance, really close to the edge like this will sometimes look like this once they're printed, where it's cut off. So you might hear the live area, which is just make sure your text is within these guidelines, and it's usually a specific dimension and everything. They can go anywhere inside, but just make sure it's within the guidelines. So that could be a reason you need them, or just for precise, trying to get things to look really nice, to align them. There's another way to align. But with the guides, these won't be printed, it's just a visual. Now if you're tired of looking at them and you've got your text where you want it, it's aligned how you'd like it, then you're going to hit Command semicolon or colon and they go away. It's just going away of a view. If you need them back, you simply hit Command or Control colon again. Another way to do that is with View. You'll notice extras. There's a lot of different types of extras, but in this case, this is the only one we're activating right now, so it's the guides. So, View Extras, they will populate, or Command colon to take them off or on. So now that we have got text, we want to, let's say this text was over here, and we want those to align perfectly to this line, but sometimes it's really hard to eyeball. And you can see that this pink is popping up every now and then, and that's called a smart guide. It's just kind of on the go and it doesn't stay, but it helps you and your eyeball really get it narrowed down. But another way to align text is with the Align tool. So that up here at the top of your Photoshop, we've got deactivated right now because not enough is selected. You've got to have 2 or more objects or layers selected to align them together. So we want to make sure we click on palette arrow, and in this instance tagline, what it's named. And now you see at the top of the screen that these are activated. And so we can align them with the center. We can align them right. We can align them left. You've got this bar where they're aligned at the tops. They're aligned through the center or the bottom. You can even click on the ellipses, and it gives you more. This is more if you had multiple rows. So I'm just going to duplicate this quickly to show you. If we had all of this selected and I clicked on the ellipses, now these are activated. And say we wanted the same space in between showdown each time. It's going to distribute this space evenly, up and down. The line will tell you it's going to go across or up and down. This up and down is because we've got palette arrow included. And then we want to center it. So now everything's centered and it's spaced evenly. So that's just another way to align. And I believe I'm not 1000% sure where a line is because it's always up here. I don't remember where it would be in the top bar. So for the sake of time, and because I don't know right now, it's always going to be in this top bar if you want to align. Alright, so I deleted Showdown, one of them. So we've got the palette arrow Showdown. And if we want to talk about just a few sentences about what this is going to entail on our poster, then we come over here to the type tool, which is on the left again. The last time we clicked it once, and then we clicked once, and it populated the placeholder text where we could go in and edit it. Now this time, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to just click on the type tool again. But this time, instead of clicking, I'm going to click and hold and drag. So I'm not going to let go of my mouse until you see the marching ants. That's basically saying, I want to drop text inside of this space only. And it's huge. So we want to go back and make it a bit smaller. And again, it's populating placeholder text. And it's very spaced out because it's wherever we left off. This is where the leading comes in. So last time we did kerning, which is the spaces between each letter. And the leading is the space between each line. So now that we have lines of text, we can actually shrink that. And I'm toggling right to left because you notice that there's the arrows. But you can also use the drop down. The toggling allows you to do it on the fly without having to click, look, click, look. And so we have not as much space needed. Maybe we want this to be a lighter text and not all caps. So you've got, maybe we want it bold, italicized, or we can do an italicized here since this font does have it. We can change the font color of just that portion to something legible. Let's just go back to black. And then once we're done with all of this, well, let's say that we don't want it to be in the center. Again, every time you click on a certain tool, it populates a new toolbar at the top. This one is a quick glance of the character palette that's over here on the A. It's the same Gotham font, light italic. It tells you what size it is. It doesn't give you the leading and kerning or the bold, the all caps options up there, but it does give you the alignment of the text. So we're just going to keep it right aligned so that it will match what our header is. So in order to kind of say, okay, I want that, you got to click on the Move tool. Because if you're in this text box here and you click Enter, everything's highlighted, and the second you click Enter, it thinks you want to delete it and start typing your own. So whenever this is highlighted, go back. Oops. Okay, sorry. So everything looks like this at this point. We just want to get off this layer, so you can click on another layer or you can click on the Move tool. That kind of like resets things so that it's saying, okay, I want this to stay like this and I'm moving on, kind of. So now we have our paragraph and we've got our 2 headers, and all of a sudden it's messed up and we want to align it again. We want to make sure. So we can do Command:, which brings back where we left off with our guides. If we don't want to do that, we can just select all of our text layers that we want aligned, and that align bar populates up here. We align it to the right edges. Everything is on the right. Now if we want to individually move the layers, but we don't always move them after we've got it aligned, it could move off, but we want it closer. So the best thing is to get it as close as you want it first, and then click all the layers and align it. I mean, you can align it as much as you need and move it around, but this way you don't have to keep moving it and changing it. But I want this to be centered, just for different. So if I have clicked on this text tool, nothing changed up here for me to move it right or left. That's because I'm in still the Move tool instead of the Type, and the Type is where this will populate at the top. The Move tool doesn't populate anything, but you've got to select one of the tools that you're working on for that to work. So again, I'll just align it to the right. So now that we have our text, next week we're going to really focus on accessibility and making this to where we've got the background dark enough or light enough so that the text can actually be seen well. We're going to work on placement, depth of field, and adding a few more elements in order to do that. So today was just about getting the brush tools loaded, playing around with kind of what they can do, and then adding typography to make, whether this is a movie poster, TV ad, just some kind of ad to where it's very informative, where you don't have to have a whole lot of text with it. So whatever your background is that you're working on, your hometown, tell us a little bit about the story, or let's just have fun with creating an ad of what's going on in the image. And like this one was the Paladero Showdown. Will T-Rex get the cherry donut? Find out July 2nd here on Teams. You know, just have fun with it. I'm going to place in my folder for the assignment this week. I could have typed it out, but I already had it laid out, and just for the sake of being able to read it, I'm going to put a black box behind it, and we will throw that down there. And this way you can just at least see the assignment, and we'll work on more of that next time. That's the accessibility part, but for now it's an ugly rectangle so that you can see. But your assignment for this week is to find some Photoshop brushes that help tell the story with more expressive design, and then incorporate this typography in it to create an ad or a poster. Just have fun. And I want to show you in our Teams platform on Resource Link. So this is a new channel I added today. Doesn't look like there's anything in it. But at this top tab, we've got files. In the files, there's a Word document that has, these are links that you can go to, the key commands, the pen tool if you want to practice, key commands for Mac and Windows. So the things that I keep saying, you can do command colon or option colon, that's what I'm talking about. And then there's Photoshop brush resources and then image resources. And we'll look at this image stuff next time. But for this time, this Brush-easy and My Photoshop brushes, those are websites that are free to use to get Photoshop brushes. So that way you can browse around and find, this is a quicker way to it. This is Brush-easy. So if you want to type in, we'll file it with brushes, and we'll just say we want a flower. We can search flower, and they have, all of these are brushes, which is crazy to me. But if we click on one, we're going to do the free download. It automatically downloads. Again, this will go into wherever your computer downloads files, which is typically the download folder. Every time I've run into this, unable to expand, I just say okay. It still doesn't. So I'm happy about that. Okay, so this is the flower brushes. And you see that this one has a lot more files in it. This is a Adobe Illustrator file, so they're vector. This is just an image that's showing you what all brushes are in there. But this is the brush, the ABR file is the one that if we double click, we're going to go to our brush palette, scroll to the very bottom, and there we see the flower brushes. Right here. So now we have that loaded, and we're going to make a new layer. We're going to make an orange flower with a paintbrush, and it's really big, so we can go back to brushes, make it smaller, and voila, we have a flower. But anyway, that is the basic way to find some brushes. So again, that resource is in your Teams folder. There's a quick link to it right there at the top of the resource links, or the file that's a Word document contains a little bit more in here. So those are where you can easily find where to look for brushes that are free and then download them and hopefully get cranking on your composition. And if you want to just take a screenshot or a JPEG and upload that for us to check out, like some of you have been, that would be great. Just always save your PSD file. So now, since this is the end of the assignment, I'm going to save here, which doesn't look like we did a whole lot, but we covered a lot of ground. I'm going to save this for next week, for week 3. Already got a folder. So next week we will, I'll probably have to change some of that, so we'll see. But week 3 start. So now we have a new place to start next week. But if you have any questions or would like any kind of help throughout the week, please reach out to Steve or I, and we will hopefully be able to help out with everything. But I know this recording is a little different. We hope that the mouse was easier to follow, and hopefully I didn't forget anything. But yeah, just keep connecting with us and let us know. All right, we'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.